Imagine a remote log cabin nestled deep in the hills of rural Tennessee, in a place so isolated that the nearest neighbor might be miles away, and the rhythm of life is set by seasons, timber, wild game, and the crack of a rifle at dusk. That's where Alvin C. York was born on December 13, 1887, to a family of modest means in Pall Mall, Tennessee. He was the third of 11 children, raised in a rough environment where every hand helped, and survival meant hard work. Education was a luxury. York himself received only 9 months of schooling in total, far less than a formal primary education. Instead, from a very young age, he learned life by doing, hunting, farming, working as a blacksmith under his father, sometimes laboring on railroads or in logging to help support his family after his father's death in 1911. That upbringing carved a young man with two contrasting sides. On the one hand, a skilled marksman, familiar with the forest, patient, precise, a man who could shoot a turkey, trap game, feed his family. On the other, a rough-hewn youth who drank too much, got into fights, drifted into trouble at times. Yet something changed. Around 1914-1915, during a wave of religious revivals sweeping through his region, York experienced a conversion. He joined the Church of Christ in Christian Union, a humble evangelical congregation that preached personal piety and nonviolence. In that moment, York committed himself to turn away from the fights, the whiskey, the bar rooms. He said later that the things I once loved, I now hate. So by 1917, when the United States entered the global conflict that was World War I and the draft took effect, York was not an eager soldier ready for battle. He tried to claim conscientious objector status, a moral stand rooted in his faith, but the Army denied his request. Faced with a wrenching decision, fight or go to jail, York returned home, wrestled with his beliefs, prayed, thought. After days of reflection, he concluded that if his conscience was reservedly clear, then perhaps duty and protection of others might justify his participation. He rejoined, prepared for service. In 1918, he shipped out to France with the U.S. Army, assigned to the 82nd Division. He arrived at the front under the brutal conditions of trench and forest warfare. His prior life, hunting in Tennessee, living off the land, taking aim at moving targets, would shape what happened next. On October 8, 1918, during the pivotal Meuse-Argonne Offensive, the largest American-led campaign of the war, York's unit was tasked with taking out German machine gun positions that pinned down advancing troops. A patrol of about 17 men moved ahead behind enemy lines. They had little intelligence, the terrain was dense, and no mistake was permitted. What followed would enter legend. The patrol came under heavy fire. Machine guns opened up. The Americans were cut down. Their officers were wounded or killed. Panic could have spread. Instead, something hard and calm overtook York. With their officers down and their own survival uncertain, he took command. Alone at first, he advanced. Shots cracked, sawdust-like bullets ripped through tree trunks and brush. York, with unmatched marksmanship and deadly calm, began picking off German gunners one by one. He didn't hide. He didn't wait. He moved and fired, each bullet finding its target. As other surviving soldiers rallied, the Germans began surrendering. In the end, York's detachment captured 132 German soldiers, 4 officers, dozens of troops, and seized multiple machine guns. Official reports credited him with killing at least 25 enemy combatants. He was promoted on the spot, given command as a sergeant, hero of the Argonne. When word spread, it shook America. In April 1919, he received the country's highest military award, the Medal of Honor. Allies too honored him. From France came the Croix de Guerre and the Legion of Honor. His transformation from poor Tennessee farmhand, once drifting, once reluctant to fight, into a national war hero, stunned the public. But York never let glory define him. He didn't chase fame. He didn't squander his reputation. Instead, when the war ended and he returned to Tennessee, he planted his feet firmly back on the soil where he came from. He married his sweetheart Gracie, raised children, many of them what he called mountain boys and girls. Over time, they became a big family. He put his fame to use, founding the Alvin C. York Institute, a school intended to give rural youth a chance at education, skill training, a path beyond the forest and farm work. With government buildings, a bridge, hospitals, and institutions named after him, York's commitment to service long outlived the war. York sometimes spoke modestly about that day in Argonne. He claimed he didn't feel like a hero, just a man trying to survive. He said that, as far as he was concerned, it was not manpower, but God's power. His faith, which once made him a conscientious objector, now stood side by side with his military valor. That paradox, soldier and pacifist, devout Christian and decorated warrior, made him deeply compelling. In 1941, Hollywood took notice. The film Sergeant York, starring Gary Cooper, turned York into a nationwide icon. But even as the world watched, York remained the same man from those Tennessee hills, humble, quiet, devoted to family and community. He never saw war as glory, he saw it as sacrifice. As the years passed, York's health declined. Still, he kept working for his people, for his home county, for rural kids, for war relief charities, for the value of service. When he died on September 2, 1964, at age 76, the nation mourned a soldier, a civilian, and a man who embodied contradictions. Believer and fighter, mountaineer and national legend, sinner turned saint. But his true legacy isn't in medals or monuments. It lives instead in a more subtle truth, that a person's beginnings don't determine their end, that faith can meet iron, that a man can rise not by ambition, but by conscience, conviction, and courage, that sometimes being pulled out of a cabin in the hills and thrust into the inferno of war doesn't corrupt a soul, it reveals it. Alvin C. York's story lives on whenever a young person from a rural town gets a chance at education because of his institute. It lives on every time someone reads about sacrifice, heroism, moral conflict, and redemption. It lives on when a soldier kneels at the grave of a fellow comrade, clutching a medal, remembering that bravery, real bravery, doesn't always come from the desire to kill, but sometimes from the need to protect. He began as a poor mountain boy. He became the most decorated American soldier of World War I. Then he returned home, not as a legend craving lights, but as a man determined to lift others. In the echo of his footsteps, we hear not bullets or bombs, but the quiet promise of second chances. Alvin C. York, blacksmith, sharpshooter, reluctant soldier, reluctant hero, devoted Christian, humble patriot. A man whose life proves that heroes are not born, they are made.